such an intimate group, I may try to move through some of the nitty-gritty things a little quicker, and then leave more time for questions at the end so we can just spend time on what you have questions about, rather than giving the whole spiel, if that's not what you're here to listen to. I will also say that for anybody who has already been to a community meeting where I have shared this, about half the presentation is the same material, explaining the project, doing an overview. But then there are some slides that I've added for this presentation to kind of get into the weeds a bit more about specific corridors, specific sections. So apologies for the duplication if you have already heard. Lauren, did you go ahead and start recording?
I did.
Great, thank you. All right, as Lauren said, my name is Virginia Lynn. I am a transportation planner with Houston Public Works. I am joined by colleagues at Houston Public Works, as well as the Planning and Development Department, and hopefully Harris County Precinct 1 will also join us tonight. Thank you for coming. We know a weeknight meeting is not always the top of your to-do list, but I appreciate that you're here. I'm excited to share with you this project. So we'll just jump right into it. This safety improvement plan is part of the city and Precinct 1's larger goals to connect our Bayou Greenway trails to complete communities with safer streets like you'll see proposed this evening. This plan will improve street safety and connect residents to essential destinations. It supports our goals from Vision Zero, the Houston Bike Plan, and Harris County Precinct 1 to eliminate traffic deaths, make Houston a safer, more accessible city, and to provide multimodal, healthy, and safe transportation choices. We know plans have come before this one, like the Southeast Houston Stroll In and Roll In Mobility Report in 2014, the Southeast Houston Mobility Plan in 2018, and the Sunnyside Complete Communities Action Plan at the end of last year. This proposal has been informed by the tenets and goals of those reports and plans. We want to improve street safety in this area. The corridor has many dangerous high crash locations, and road users are experiencing 3 times the rate of crashes than that of other similar Texas roadways. Along Calhoun Road and MLK Boulevard in particular, speeding is commonplace. These high speeds are likely related to the fact that while only 9% of crashes involve people walking or biking here, those individuals are involved in 70% of the fatal crashes. This is extremely significant. This map here on the right shows locations in deeper red where the greatest number of crashes have happened. To compound that, I want to talk a little bit about Vision Zero. Vision Zero is the city's commitment to end traffic deaths and serious injuries by 2030. As part of Vision Zero, we analyze the streets in our city that have the highest rates of serious injuries and fatalities. And those streets, those corridors, make up the high injury network, which you can see in red, a zoomed in portion in red on the screen. 60% of traffic deaths and injuries on our city streets are happening on these corridors that are shown in red, which is the high injury network. Looking in the area for today's project, which is Calhoun, Griggs, and MLK that are highlighted in yellow, the high injury networks are shown intersecting and overlapping. As you can see, there are a number of intersections and segments of Calhoun, Griggs, and MLK Boulevard that are on our high injury network, like intersections with Old Spanish Trail at Calhoun and Griggs, MLK from Dewberry Street to Belfort, and MLK from Sunbeam to Sims Bayou. It is extremely important that we use this opportunity with this project to make these dangerous streets and intersections safer for all road users. I'm also going to take this opportunity to share 2 characteristics of these roadways that contribute to these dangerous conditions and high crash rates. Here on the left-hand side, we're looking at average daily traffic. And on the right-hand side, we're looking at 85th percentile speed, meaning the speed that 85% of drivers are traveling at or below. As you can see on the diagram on the left-hand side, the segment of MLK from Belfort to 610 is the highest traffic segment in the entire Calhoun-Griggs MLK corridor. However, as shown on the right-hand side, that same segment is also experiencing some of the greatest levels of speeding. So speeding on the right-hand side, any corridors that are shown in red are experiencing on at least 15% of people are traveling at or above 10 miles per hour or more over the speed limit, which is significant because an increase of 10 miles per hour on a 35 mile per hour speed limit roadway changes a crash between a vehicle and a pedestrian from the pedestrian having a 50% to only a 10% chance of survival. It really is extremely important that we get this traffic moving at safer speeds on these corridors. With this proposal, we want to improve street quality. The roads on this corridor were designed and built to only facilitate the movement of cars and trucks through the corridor, presenting major safety risk to pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users. Currently, there are some gaps in the sidewalk network. Crosswalks are hard to see if they exist, and bike lanes are rare and do not feel safe or comfortable to use. These roads should be built to provide a safe way for community members in cars, on foot, on bikes, or on the bus to move safely. We want to improve access to transit with this proposal. The corridor contains a great deal of transit use, especially along the high-frequency MLK Lockwood bus line. There are multiple transit centers and connections to the Metro Rail Purple Line. However, most bus stops are not comfortable or pleasant to use. Additionally, due to many unmarked crossings at bus stops, they may be difficult or unsafe to access. This map on the right shows the locations of the proposed improvements from Brays Bayou and the University of Houston at the north end to Airport Boulevard and Sims Bayou at the southern end. In blue, you can see Calhoun Road, which is crossed by Brays Bayou and Old Spanish Trail and is next to McGregor Park. In orange, there's Griggs Road, which is crossed by Old Spanish Trail also and ends at the Palm Center Transit Center. And lastly, this proposal includes a segment of MLK Boulevard in green from Griggs Road to Sims Bayou. MLK is crossed by the 610 loop. This proposal will address street safety, street quality, and improve transportation in a variety of ways like sidewalk and curb ramp improvements, new and restriped crosswalks, intersection improvements, protected bikeways, and rebuilt better placed bus stops. There are many neighborhood assets along the corridor that will be made safer to travel to, such as Bayou Greenway trails, parks, retail, medical facilities, transit, education, and community centers. There's so much more than I could show on this map. And now I want to show you some examples of what the changes on the corridor will look like. At intersections, you'll see shortened crossing distances, restriped crossings, improved signal timing so all users can safely move through the intersection, and new curb ramps, which will allow users of all mobility levels to move between the street level and the sidewalk. All new bus stops will be rebuilt to current Metro standards for safety and comfort. At many bus stops, new crossings will be added to increase safe access to transit. Along the corridor, bus stop locations will be optimized to increase the reliability of the bus route. Floating bus stops, like the example you see on the right hand of the screen, like on West Cavalcade, will be implemented on MLK Boulevard to improve safety for transit users and those using the bikeway. These floating bus stops will also improve reliability of the bus route by limiting unnecessary stops and conflicts. We're going to get into some of the features of the bus improvements later when we talk about MLK as a Metro Boost corridor also. And then lastly, I wanted to show how new high comfort bikeways may look like on the corridor. These would be curb separated, similar to what you see in the example image on the left. High comfort bikeways are intended for all people on bikes from age 8 to 80 to feel safe and comfortable using them. For the southern portion of MLK Boulevard, a shared use median path is proposed, maybe like the one you see on the right. This would be available for anyone walking, biking, or rolling to commute, run errands, and play. So far, since July, we have been doing some engagement and some outreach, and we have attended a couple community events and community organization meetings. We have really enjoyed sharing this proposal and have already received valuable feedback about the plan and the corridors themselves. Also, this past Sunday, we went out with Commissioner Rodney Ellis and Bike Houston and rode on the streets included in this plan. And as you can see in the image on the right, we experienced the standard delays that we know residents often experience due to freight rail over the streets in this area. We had a great time overall, but even early on a Sunday morning, we experienced the dangerous speeding that can occur on these roadways. Okay, so now I'm going to move into going through the segments, and this is the part where I might click through some slides relatively quickly because we can always come back to them and dig into them in the Q&A portion. Starting with Calhoun Road as the first segment, the layout generally is one lane in each direction with either parking on the edges or a center turn lane. The segment north of Brays Bayou is 2 lanes in each direction, but that's a pretty short one. Calhoun Road generally experiences lower traffic volumes, but remains an important access point to the University of Houston, Brays Bayou, and McGregor Park. For each street in this proposal, I'm going to go through what the typical street sections look like. I have all the sections available to me in the feasibility study, so I can pull them up after this if we want to dig into one that I haven't shown. But for the sake of time, I've limited them, so we just look at what a typical section on one of these roadways will look like. So on Calhoun Road between Brays Bayou and Old Spanish Trail, It's proposed that the parking and the existing low comfort on-street bike lane will be converted into dedicated, protected, buffered bike lanes, as you can see here. On the segment to the south, a similar treatment will happen on Calhoun Road, or is proposed to happen on Calhoun Road, where the center turn lane and the low comfort bike lanes will be removed and converted to high comfort, protected, buffered bike lanes on the edges. Lastly, for each segment in this proposal, I'm going to share with you the traffic volume representation. I apologize if you get a bit tired of it, you'll see it 3 times. However, what this shows is that as a general rule, we say one vehicular travel lane on a city street can handle about 800 cars per hour each direction. So in this case, the segment of Calhoun Road that is included in this proposal that experiences peak traffic volumes is only at 330 cars in that hour. That's between 5 and 6 p.m. And so if we go down to one lane in each direction on Calhoun Boulevard, Calhoun Road, we will still be significantly above the capacity that is needed, which is only 330 cars at peak. Next, we'll move to Griggs Road. Griggs Road is the road in this plan that has the most variability throughout the corridor. So it starts on the west side as kind of a residential, low traffic volume, low speed street. But as you move eastward, as you get closer to OST and MLK, the number of lanes increases and the speeds traveled tends to increase, and the number of the traffic volumes increase. Griggs is a very important corridor for commercial, residential, and community activity, and we see all types of road users here: walking, biking, driving, and taking transit. So a typical section of Griggs Road is shown here between Scott and OST. And the recommendation in this proposal is that a lane is converted to be a high comfort, protected, buffered bikeway. Another typical section between Calhoun Road and MLK on Griggs Road has a similar treatment. A lane would be converted into a high comfort, protected, buffered bikeway. And then lastly, this segment that I wanted to share because it's a bit different due to the light rail between MLK and the Palm Center Transit Center. Instead of changing any of the on-street layout, the recommendation, as you can see on the right-hand side of the section at the bottom, is that the sidewalk would be expanded to a 10-foot wide shared use path that would allow walking, biking, rolling all along it together with enough room for that to be done safely. And lastly, I mentioned before that you're going to see this same kind of slide for each segment. On Griggs Road, the peak traffic segment is between MLK and Calhoun, traveling west early in the morning between 7 and 8 a.m. At that time, during this study, we did see almost 1,000 vehicles travel through it in that hour. The recommendation in this proposal is to convert one lane to a protected buffered bikeway. However, through the feasibility study, it was confirmed that level of service would be maintained at an acceptable level, even with this conversion. And in fact, due to, and you may be familiar with this, but due to the intersection with MLK and the the signal timing there, there's a likelihood that this number could be improved as the signal timing is improved because of the way the light rail moves through there. I don't know if you've ever gotten stuck at that intersection, but there's a chance to even improve how traffic flows through that intersection and corridor. Lastly, we'll go through MLK. MLK remains quite consistent throughout its corridor, at least through Griggs to Belfort, and then through Belfort to Sims Bayou. It has a bit of a different layout, but from Griggs to Belfort, it's 3 lanes in both directions, separated by a median. As you may know, has quite high levels of traffic and quite high speeds. Though it is an important connection to residential districts and there are businesses located throughout the street. MLK south of Belfort narrows to 2 lanes in each direction with a significantly wider median that is lined with beautiful trees. As you likely know, that area south of Belfort does experience significant drainage concerns, and drainage improvements will have to be the first step to any safety improvements for that segment of MLK from Belfort to Sims Bayou. So segment B, which is the segment from 610 to Belfort, the recommendation is for a conversion of one lane to be a protected buffered bikeway. This is what we're going to see. This is the proposal all the way from Griggs to Belfort. And then from Belfort south to Sims Bayou, there is an exciting idea to create a shared use path in the center that here is shown as 15 feet wide. I think it would be a really exciting idea, but as I just mentioned before, this area needs serious drainage improvements, so that would have to come first before anything could be installed in the median, like a shared use path that we'd love to see. Lastly, for MLK, I'm going to share a quick video about what a boost corridor is, because MLK will be getting the boost corridor treatment. So let's just watch this for just a second. Okay, so I will just say this boost corridor is a program that comes from the Metro Next Metro program to improve the walk, the stop, and the ride on these high bus traffic routes across the city. So MLK is on the list to get these improvements, as is Scott Street, which is a street to the west. So we can talk more about those improvements in the Q&A section. And then lastly, for MLK, I'll share that same slide about traffic volumes. That peak hour volume on MLK is between 610 to Belfort, and it sees 1,200 cars about in an hour at that peak hour volume. However, with 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, we expect that MLK will be able to still maintain a capacity of 1,600 cars per hour, so it will be well over capacity with this proposal. And now I just wanted to go through and note some of the questions we've gotten throughout giving this presentation in the last few months, because we have addressed these on the Let's Talk Houston page that we'll share in the chat, but we're also more than happy to talk about them here with everyone. So how will these improvements stop dangerous speeding? Will these improvements increase vehicular congestion? Will this project address the stoppages at railroad crossings? Will this project improve the poor signal timing at intersections with Metro Rail? And can these safety improvements be continued along MLK south of Sims Bayou? So we can certainly get into those questions and answers in the Q&A. And then I wanted to give you some updates since the last time I presented this information. First and foremost, in the current plan, the design and construction is going to end at MLK and Belfort. Due to those significant drainage improvements that I mentioned, the installation of a shared use path cannot happen until those improvements are completed. So currently we're only thinking about Calhoun, Griggs, and MLK from Griggs to Belfort as part of this design and construction. The next question, can these safety improvements be continued along MLK south of Sims Bayou that I mentioned before? We were recently told that Gulf K TERS 8 has authorized a feasibility study for MLK from Sims to Orem, and that's going to include an evaluation of the drainage along that corridor. So we're really excited about the opportunity for these improvements to extend further south and make a much longer north-south connection. And then lastly, the Calhoun segment is the first one going through the design process, and it is currently at 60%. So there are ongoing conversations with UH about the trail segment that's going to connect Calhoun to Wheeler, which we can look at a proposal for that. But it is moving through the design phase. So any feedback on that would be great, because soon enough it will be at 100% design, which we're really excited about. And then lastly, just a little timeline. We started doing outreach back in the fall, in the early fall, maybe late summer. Right now, we just did a community bike ride and a virtual public meeting tonight. In mid-December, so starting in the next couple weeks, the overlay construction on MLK between Griggs and 610 is going to begin. And then after that, we will continue gathering feedback and finalizing design through early 2022. And then we are looking forward to construction beginning on Calhoun in summer of 2022, with the other ones following. And then to that note, the order of these corridors and how they're going through design is Calhoun corridor is first. As I said, it's currently at 60%. Then it'll be the Griggs corridor, and then it will be the MLK corridor, but only to Belfort, as is what's currently feasible. So now I ask the question to you: what mobility concerns do you have on this corridor? What safety issues exist where you live or work? And what are we missing from this proposal? I'm going to wrap up the next slide and then we'll take questions, but we really do rely on your input. So even if you don't say anything now, if you want to email us or call us with this contact information after the fact, we'll share all that in the chat. We're going to post this recording on Let's Talk Houston. So you should have many ways to get in touch with us to share with us what you think. And then lastly, this is the link to Let's Talk Houston, the page where we have all of the updates and all of the information about this proposal, including the Healthy Connections study, which really gets into the weeds about every intersection, the traffic counts, the speed volumes, all that good stuff. It also has a place for comments if you want to comment publicly there. And that ends the presentation. So I will stop talking at you for now. I appreciate you listening to that whole thing. And open up the floor for any questions or comments that you may have. And I see that Ricky has his hand raised, so I will go ahead and I think you can unmute yourself.
Good evening.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi. So one question I had, I know you were talking about, the center, the really comfortable lane for, bikers and pedestrians, where it's in the center of the roadway. It's probably not looking like it's going to be happening right now, just because, like you said, the drainage things need to take place first. I'm just curious, do you have anything, or, I mean, is there a way you can describe how that in the future, if it happens, if it gets built, the center bike lane transitions into, whatever the next turn, or, I mean, because I guess what I'm trying to say is, you can't travel down the center of the roadway, forever. You're going to have to hit some intersection and cross over somewhere. So do you have anything, or can you describe like what that is as far as, transitioning from the center lane to make a left turn or right turn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the biker's perspective, the opportunity to turn left or right will happen at the median opening. So along MLK, there are a number of median openings that allow the cars to make U-turns and turn left and right through them, and it'll be the same for those traveling on bikes. The design of that is, has not barely even begun. We have in the feasibility study a draft drawing of what the transition would look like between the on-street bike lanes as they transition to be a median shared use path, right? Because that will require a little bit of moving in a different pattern than you might expect to get to that median path. But as far as the left and the right turns, we haven't begun design. So I think because this will be a new sort of treatment for the city, a median shared use path, I think we can think of creative ways to make sure that those left and right turns are safe for those on bikes to do, and those walking or rolling in that median path to make sure that they can get across without concern about vehicles speeding and not stopping for them. So another tricky spot, I will say, just thinking about the shared use path, is the transition between it and then moving southwards, like to the bayou. That's another spot that's going to require a very close look, and has not started to be designed yet because the layout of the bridge there is limited to what it currently is. And there is no median, right? As it goes over, there's no median there. Of course, they just built the bridge to be for the travel lanes. So these things will all require a close look when the time comes to get that designed to make sure it's safe for everyone. And Mr. Cave? Can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was just trying to unmute. I apologize for the delay there.
Okay.
Certainly, good evening, and it's good to see and hear you again. And so my question is related to the speeding, first of all. I've kind of noticed that because the section I live in is a 4-lane section.
Mhm.
And I noticed even on your diagram that the speeding is as bad in the 2-lane sections, at least portions of it, as it is in the 3-lane section. Am I correct?
Yeah, let me jump back to that so we can just all be looking at that together. Because you're exactly right. So the percent above speed limit is the same in that 2-lane section between, I think we're getting closer to Sunbeam as we move south. So not quite at Belfort, but yeah, that area where it's 2 lanes. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so my contention is that by taking away the 3rd lane in the section from 610 to Belfort, probably is not going to impact the speeding a whole lot, because the section I live in, which is a 2-lane and has always been a 2-lane on both sides, I've kind of paid attention to the traffic speeds of recent, and they're pretty. I mean, they're pretty high. I mean, because they're in cases I live. You probably don't know the section, but from Selinsky, I live just south of Selinsky a little bit, and it's a long stretch with no traffic lights, no stop signs, and so you get some pretty good speeding through there. So so number one. Number two is, as I speak right now, there's clearing in a section of my community in which there's going to be close to 500 new single-family homes built.
Yeah.
And I project that that's going to probably double at least the traffic currently that's going up Martin Luther King during peak times. Has that been factored into your numbers, given that when we get north of Belfort, we're going to be condensed down to, we're going to be, have 2 lanes, and it's going to even be worse because the second inside lane is going to be the bus lane during peak times.
So we did look into that. We were able to look into the numbers of housing units that are being developed in that area south of Sims Bayou. And we determined that the number, when I shared the slide earlier about how the road is built over capacity and even at 2 lanes with the idea that a lane can move about 800 vehicles per hour in each direction, that even with those developments, and if every single one is driving on the roadways, right, it would not negatively impact. You would still be over capacity. So we did take time to look into that, and we are not seeing an impact on the levels of traffic due to those developments. I know they're quite massive, but they are single family units. They're not, as far as we can see, they were not multifamily large scale. And so those single family units do tend to impact the traffic levels less overall.
Are you sure?
We feel very comfortable with that assessment.
Yeah. And just today I was leaving my home, and my street comes into Martin Luther King, and it was during the peak hour, because fortunately I'm retired. I don't travel much. I try to avoid the peak hours nowadays, but I noticed that, oh my gosh, it took me a few minutes to number one, get to the median, and then a few more minutes to merge into the traffic, because it was so much traffic and it was speeding.
Yeah.
And so my greatest concern is that I get it, that certainly we want better mobility for pedestrians and bikers, but given the rapid growth of new homes and therefore new traffic, and given that our biking population currently is probably very low, if existent, that to give up a whole lane of traffic on both sides, to me, I thought was perhaps maybe the wrong direction to go, given the traffic. But I see that that's probably a foregone conclusion, that that's where we're headed.
Well, I think your comment is really important. And I know that conversion of a lane from vehicular traffic to bike traffic is a big change. And so we definitely do not want to do it without taking your concern very seriously. I will say that in terms of traffic calming and getting vehicles to travel slower so that you can safely get to that median and continue along your way, I think the city would be more than happy on MLK to look at more traffic calming improvements that we can do that are unrelated to bikeways. This plan has a lot of improvements at intersections, crosswalks, other things, but I think we can always do more. And so if we can look into more ways to slow down the vehicle speeds on MLK, I think that's only a good thing. And I think we should continue that conversation through this plan and beyond.
Virginia, may I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, Mr. Charles. My name is Ian Lovichek, and thank you for joining us tonight. I think it's a very good conversation. It's a very good point about the traffic volumes and making sure that we're fully accommodating everybody who needs to move. And we acknowledge that probably most people on these corridors are driving, and they'll be driving. I've grown up in Houston, and it's a driving city, and it's going to be that way for a while. And we need to acknowledge that. And I think one of the benefits here is that we also have the ability, as Virginia pointed out, to look at all these intersections. And one of the things that we look at again and again on all these corridors around town is that really those major intersections are where we have the most headache for everybody. If you're driving, where are you waiting most of the time? It's at a signal that does not turn. It's taking a long time, or you're at a stop sign. And with this project, we'll be taking a very close look at each of those major intersections. And I think if we can get the intersections right, we'll be able to move all of the traffic that's coming through here, because we really have, you can move a lot of lanes. I mean, that 800 vehicle per hour that Virginia's talking about, that's at the low end. That's really with the assumption that you're stopping a lot at a lot of traffic signals. But as you're pointing out, we don't currently have a lot of signals out here. So really those lanes could probably move even more people. And so the key is to get the intersections right. And this gives us a great opportunity to do that. So stay tuned. As we talked about, we'll have to look at how the intersections work with that median too, where eventually there'll be that median trail. All that'll be thought about. How do you get all the details right at your signals? How do we make it safer for everybody too?
Well, great. We do appreciate, because I think we pushed forward the idea of going into the median from Belfort south. And so we appreciate that you all are giving great consideration to that, although it's going to be delayed because of the drainage. So we certainly appreciate that. And I know at Selinsky and Martin Luther King, which is not you all's project, but as I understand, the TERS, Gulfgate TERS is going to improve that box and get rid of the median, which should help some. And I appreciate that you are willing to push forward the need to do some other traffic looks, because I don't think going from 3 to 2 lane is really going to dramatically affect the speeding negatively. It's probably going to have to take some other things, signalization, more signals or something to affect that. So
I think you're right about the lanes itself are probably not going to solve the speeding problem. I think it's just all these little pieces of the puzzle. Because when I drive on all these streets, I mean they're big. Martin Luther King is a big street. You don't stop very much. It's really built to move you fast through there. Hey, if you're living there, you're a secondary thought. I mean, if you get across or you try to pull out of your street, I mean that was not designed for you. It was designed to get cars through your neighborhood, right?
right.
And it does that pretty well. If you live there, so the lane widths themselves are part of that puzzle to work to kind of not undo what's there. We don't want to undo it, but we do want to make sure that street is really serving the community first and foremost, in my opinion. And so the lane width, anything else we'll look at the signals. We might be able to look at some other features along here to be able to bring down those speeds even a little bit more. But there's really no one silver bullet. And some of this will be, how do we also train the driving public to treat our roads a little bit differently too. You don't have to speed through a neighborhood, for example. If you go 30 miles an hour, it's not going to take you that much longer than if you go 40 miles an hour, but you might save somebody's life.
Yeah.
I think we're with you, and we're partners with you. I hate to think about this as a foregone conclusion. We're still ironing out all the details, and there's lots of things that we want this to be a project for the community.
Yeah.
Well, certainly we appreciate being involved, and to the extent that we can, when you do resume the section south of Belfort, perhaps we can have another gathering with our Civic Alliance and kind of look at the pre-design of that section. but that's. One last question. What do you anticipate the time frame now for that section to resume design and build?
For the section south of Belfort,
Yes.
unfortunately, I just checked in internally on that, and there is no current time frame. It's so early on. What they're looking for, so there was a Sunnyside drainage improvement study done, because the whole neighborhood of Sunnyside, that entire area, needs a lot of improvements.
Okay.
And so the city is looking for community development block grant funding to facilitate those improvements. The city knows what needs to be done. The study was done. The city knows what needs to happen there, but the funding needs to become available. And as of yet, it has not been awarded. So the hunt is on for that funding.
Okay.
And once it is found, then a timeline can be created.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ricky, it looks like you had maybe one more question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's related to the project, but not directly. I mean, I guess it's just kind of a bike lane question in general. Are you guys working with, or whoever's in charge, are they working with anyone to make sure that parking doesn't occur in these new lanes? I'm not sure how much parking is on those lanes currently, but I mean, it's just kind of like it's just sad to see that, driving through the city, even, downtown on Lamar Street, like passing by the Four Seasons, I see Houston police officers parked in the bike lane. It doesn't make sense. So I'm wondering how are you guys addressing that, or whoever's in charge is, how's that going?
I don't have a great answer for you. Enforcement is a really important part of maintaining our bikeways as safe and usable for everyone that wants to use them. It is illegal to park in them currently, and when these are constructed, it will be illegal to park in them. I will say the benefit of these, and I'm sure maybe some of my colleagues have something to add, but the benefit of these is they will be curb separated rather than armadillos or something else. So they'll be a little harder to mount and get into. And we'll at any points where the entrances would be wide, we're going to look into vertical delineation that we can do, things that we can do to very clearly indicate to someone in a car that it is not accessible for them. So in the design, we will do those things. As for enforcement, it is an ongoing struggle. I don't know if Ian or others have something to add to that. Lauren's turned her camera on.
Yeah, I think as the bikeways come on board, like right after construction is roughly complete, we try to work with Park Houston, who helps us with enforcement, that, hey, there's this new infrastructure here. With the no parking in the bike lane ordinance, they can ticket people without any no parking signage. So that's where we're at now. So it's just a matter of making sure they're aware of the new facilities in the area to be on the lookout for, and we're trying to do a better job of keeping them informed when we're rolling out bikeways. So ongoing partnership with them and making sure they're looking out for it too, to make sure that enforcement happens. So that will be the case with this project as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. All right. Well, this was a small group, but I am grateful for your attendance. With nothing else, I think we can go ahead and close out. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.